Good morning and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the pCloudy webinar series. The topic for today's webinar is lifecycle automation for multi-channel testing with cloud-based lab. This is a joint webinar presented by pCloudy and our partner Hexaware. Before I introduce our speakers, a couple of housekeeping notes. The audience will be in mute mode for the duration of the webinar. However, please do send in your questions in the chat window, and we will address them at the end of the session. All right, let me introduce our first speaker for today. Our first speaker is Nagendra BS. He's the Associate Vice President, Digital Assurance, Practice and Solutions at Hexaware. Our second speaker is Nilesh Tarale. He's the Vice President, Pre-Sales and Operations at pCloudy. With that, let me hand over the session to Nagendra. Nagendra, all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Giri. Good morning and good evening to folks on the webinar. And we will have two parts of this webinar. First part is where we will run you through details of the solution that we talk about for multi-channel testing. And second part is where we would have more of the discussion specific to the platform, the mobile device platform that we talk about. Now, you are seeing the agenda slide. In the next 45 to 15 minutes, we plan to wrap it up, where you want to cover the following things, where we will start with in terms of how do we actually achieve quality with speed, and what are the key drivers for this. And then there's something which we have been talking about, and people who have joined us for some of the previous webinars, it will be more of a recap. And then we're going to move specific to the multi-channel testing specific challenges, look into some of the key challenges. Then we will get into the solution. How do we apply the life cycle automation, right? Or how do we deliver the life cycle automation for the multi-channel testing? We will look at more in terms of the architecture, what we actually have built for our customers, and also we will go through a demo specifically taking to the nuts and bolts of the solution. And lastly, we would have our colleague Nilesh from pCloudy talk about key features of the cloud-based mobile lab. Now, moving on, I think this is something which we as practitioners have been seeing day in and day out, where quality with speed is more of a given now. The earlier old school thought wherein one has to compromise between speed and or quality, right? That's no more acceptable, not just for our customers, even for ourselves, right? As practitioners who have been in this industry for a while. Now, that's something which is hygiene, if you ask me, in the industry. And if you look at in terms of what options we have to address this quality with speed, which is a need of the hour, especially considering agile and digital transformation being the drivers of delivering the quality with speed. Now, that's where we as an organization started looking at how do we achieve this quality with speed? What are the options that we have, and what are the levers that we can actually bring in? So first thing what we did was we took a look at in terms of if we have to deliver quality with speed, given everything what we have today, automation is something which is the biggest lever for us to deliver quality with speed. And for that, we started looking at in terms of if we are doing enough automation, why are we not able to achieve quality with speed today, right? And that's when we spend little more time in analyzing where the effort is going. And as a practitioner, if you look at the effort that goes in any of the testing projects, right, or any of the testing programs, irrespective of whether it's waterfall, agile, or an iterative methodology, there are four key activities that against which we consume our efforts as well as the corresponding dollars. And 90% of this effort goes into primarily the design, where we have to write test cases, execute the test cases, and report the test results. I'm talking very broadly. Within that, there is almost an equal percentage that gets split between design and in terms of the execution. Now, if you look at the focus of the traditional automation, primarily has been on the regression, wherein we have a regression suite that we identify for our release testing, and we try to identify what are the automatable test cases and go ahead and automate that. And that is more of a post facto. Now, that's where we saw that net if customer is spending $100, maybe probably around $16 is the effort against which we are trying to optimize. And we have white space that actually we can address across design, not just in terms of bringing in the automation for the test case design, but also trying to bring in automation even for the progression testing. When we say progression testing, it's more in terms of in-sprint automation. As and when the new features are built, how do we actually test them through automation? The last part is more of an reporting, and how do we bring in an integration between all these three. And that's a solution that we have come out with. I will talk about in detail. That's more in terms of looking at what are the drivers for speed with quality. Now, if you look at, there's a different aspect that we'll also have to keep in mind when we try to address this from the digital transformation point of view. When we say digital transformation, it's the way we engage with our customers using different digital channels, right? It could be more in terms of the current browser-based, where web becomes the primary channel. Second, it could be a mobile, wherein within mobile there are different options that which you can engage. It could be again a browser-based or a native app, or it could be any other channels that we actually use to interact with our customers. Now, the moment we get into the multi-channel, where customers try to increase their reach to their customers using different channels, it brings in altogether different challenges, right? Be it in terms of looking at how do we ensure that whatever functionality that I'm offering to my end customers is performing consistently across all the different channels. And that becomes more critical, especially with different form factor of devices, with different operating systems and the different OEMs. Now, adding to that would be in terms of assuming that I have to support all these channels, how do I optimize? Earlier I used to test it for one channel, and that itself was time consuming. Now I have to support 3 or 4 more channels. How do we optimize the testing effort across all the channels? Third, even if I decide to have some approach to optimize, there is an amount of investment that I have to do on having the right kind of infrastructure, right? That's where we have to look at how do we make sure that we keep in pace with the ever-changing market in terms of the kind of devices that actually proliferate. At the same time, how do I address the maintenance part of it? And finally, in terms of, these are the things that more in terms of the infrastructure that we address, but how do we also optimize the testing through automation, having a platform which enables us to test all the different channels with all reusability, right? So these are some things which we have tried to address both from the lifecycle automation point of view and also from the multi-channel testing point of view. Now, getting on to the specific solution that we talk about in today's webinar, we have built a platform called Integrated Design to Execution, IDTE in short, which enables us to look at automation across the testing lifecycle, starting from test case design, wherein we leverage the model-based testing tools to generate the test cases. Now, on top of that, we also have built-in integration between model-based testing tools and the automation framework. In this case, we have built a multi-channel automation framework called Talos, wherein it supports different channels in terms of the web, in terms of desktop-based applications, or it could be mobile-based applications, chatbots, and different methodologies where we can leverage the automation approach even for the traditional SDLC or more of a BDD or TDD driven SDLC, right? So that's where the automation framework is capable of supporting all the different SDLC types and also all the different channels. Now, what we have done is we have worked with our partner, in this case Conformit, who provides us the primary platform for the model-based testing, and we have worked with them to build what is called as a connector or a publisher, by virtue of which we can actually not only generate the manual test cases, the item number 1 that you're seeing on the screen, but also generate the corresponding automation scripts. And the third key important part is we not only generate the automation scripts for one channel, we also generate the automation scripts for different channels, wherein using a single model, which I'm going to talk about in detail, we can generate automation scripts for, it could be for a mobile application, which could be for a desktop application, or it could be for a browser-based application. And there are different combinations that you can have within a mobile application itself. Now, finally, what is that we are trying to achieve? We are trying to build in the integration between design, execution, and the last component is our reporting, wherein all the results that gets executed are automatically uploaded onto the test management tool. It could be any of the test management tools in the market, and make it seamless between design, execution, and reporting. And finally, what is that you want to achieve? One, how do we ensure the productivity improvement, faster time to market with a reduced cost, right? And we're going to go into details of this through the demo in the next few minutes. Okay, so let me start with a demo, and this demo would be for around 5 to 7 minutes, and overall probably will spend another 10-15 minutes going through in detail, right? So what we have done is we have taken a simple scenario wherein we want to test a given functionality, for example, booking a flight, which all of us are familiar with, for different channels, right, where we could use this functionality on an Android app, or it could be on a browser-based desktop web, or it could be a mobile web. And the tools that primarily we actually use are, one is the model-based testing tool, which I talked about before, with an integration with our Talos, which is a multi-channel automation platform. And the last component of this solution is the pCloudy device form, which enables us actually in providing the required devices as well as the browser combinations on demand. So we'll go through the workflow, and there's a simple workflow that we have taken for your understanding, where you could see that the starting point can be the same for all the channels, but the path that you take would be different. Now, how do we do it? Now, model-based testing is an approach wherein you represent the behavior of the application in the tool, and there are different tools in the market today, and this is a very mature market now, unlike 5 years before, where there was so much of effort required to build a model, and the skills required for building a model was different altogether from the skills that you require today. Now, coming to the way the model is built in the model-based testing tool that we have chosen, basically, if you imagine a screen, right? If you imagine a screen wherein you would have different controls or objects, and these controls are bound together by a business logic. Now, the tool allows you to represent the behavior of the application first by capturing the different controls on the screen and through the what they call as a structure diagram, and then have the business logic built between these controls by having an activity diagram. Now, that's something which we'll talk in terms of how we build it. But before we actually do that, first thing that I have to decide is what is the output that I want from the model, right? And that's where I choose. And if you look at the two things that we are choosing here are, one, we are saying that I need a Excel scripter, which is the manual test cases that I need to generate. And second thing, what you're observing is the Talos scripter. And this is an exclusive scripter, which are the connector that has been built in collaboration with the partner for our automation framework, right? So with this, I will choose what kind of output I would want. Once I have chosen output I want to represent the behavior of the application in the tool. And the first thing I do is I create the common structure diagram, because this is something which we take a call based on the kind of application, right? Finally, if I can actually represent all the controls across the different channels, there is a lot of reusability that I can bring in by having these controls being reused across different channels. That's where I have the common structure diagram to represent the application behavior in terms of the controls. In terms of the business process, right, the business logic, each of the channels might implement in a different way, right? And that again depends on the channel and the strategy that each of the customers adapt in terms of how they want to have a workflow for each of the channels. Depending on that, we can decide whether I would have a separate activity diagram for each of the channels, or I can have a single activity diagram for all the channels. If you see in this case, we have 3 separate activity diagrams created, for one for Android native app, mobile web, as well as desktop web. The good part is there is almost 70% of reusability across all these activity diagrams, wherein you have a common structure diagram. So once I do this, I will have to review the activity diagram from a business logic point of view. And who does this? Typically, it will be a business user or a business analyst. Instead of reviewing the test cases, the focus would be on reviewing the model, which is more simple and more intuitive compared to the traditional approach. Now, once I do that, using my connector or a scripter, I will be able to generate the automation scripts. Now, what you're seeing is, this is where again the connector comes into picture, where I can decide which channel I need to actually build the automation scripts. Now, there are different channels that are supported. In this case, we have Android native as one channel, mobile web as another channel, and as well as web as another channel. Now, once I choose this, with a click of a button, I will be able to generate the manual test cases as well as the corresponding automation scripts. Now, this is a process wherein one has to load the model, which is more of a compilation, and then I generate test cases. Now, if you're seeing on the left-hand side, you could see that there is a folder that has come up, Talos, right? And this is where we have worked with our partner to map the controls as well as in terms of the different actions of the tool, model-based testing tool, with our automation platform, which enables us to generate the scripts, which I will go through in little more detail, and I will be able to use them by importing these scripts seamlessly onto the platform. So similarly, I adopt an approach for different channels. Today, I have only changes coming in one channel. Then I can only choose that specific channel and go into it. In this case, we are choosing different channels. For example, we saw generating the automation scripts for native app. Similarly, we are now generating the automation scripts even for the desktop web. Right, and moving on, you can also see that we also generate the corresponding automation scripts even for a browser-based application. So what this provides is flexibility, wherein I will be able to choose dynamically the channel against which I need to build the automation scripts, and make sure that I have the required connectivity also enabled as part of this whole integrated design to execution, which I'll talk about in terms of the device infrastructure. So this is where you saw in terms of how simple or seamless it is to generate the manual test cases and the automation scripts. We will now go through the little more details in terms of how does this look like, right? What you saw is, we saw generating the automation scripts and manual test cases for 3 channels. We'll just take a simple look at in terms of what each of them look like, right? For example, manual test cases, right? So this is the manual test cases that we have been able to generate for the Android native app, wherein the tool generates the test cases which implement the NLP, natural language processing, that enables us to get the test cases as if somebody has written it manually, right? Now, this is the manual test case, what you saw, and similar test cases also are generated for the different channels, and the tool also generates the corresponding requirement traceability matrix, wherein it provides you an option to map the requirements to the model level, and the same gets actually implemented as part of your traceability matrix. The other thing that I want to talk about in terms of automation scripts, and this is the most important part of the whole solution, wherein if you look at as part of automation scripts, we generate 4 or 5 different output files. One is called as an impact analysis, which actually comes in handy, especially if you're doing a maintenance. And when you're doing an in-sprint testing, where the functionality is built incrementally, I need to identify which of the test cases are new test cases, which of the test cases are actually got modified from the previous version, or which of the one which have got added new, or which of the one which are obsolete, right? So the typical approach is to go manually and identify those impact analysis. In this case, we inherit the impact analysis feature of the tool onto the automation script. And what you're seeing is the impact analysis file, which will be used by our automation platform in the backend to identify the impact of the change on the model. Right? This is more in terms of the file that gets used in the backend. The second one, what you see is the actual mapping of the components, right? Where you see the mapping of the different components of the tool, model-based testing tool, with our automation platform. The third one is more of a test data, which is very important, wherein we'll be able to map the test data either at the model level, or we'll be able to point it out to an external data source. And the last one is in terms of the test suite, which actually is the test cases. And object repository is something which also gets created as part of the whole exercise. And one has to spend effort in updating column C and column D. Again, we have the scanners which are built to get the object details, and this also gets automatically populated, thereby eliminating the need for somebody to manually write or create the automation scripts. So till now, we saw on how a model-based testing approach is being used to build a application functionality or represent application behavior in the tool and generate the automation scripts. In the next maybe couple of minutes, we are going to go through on how these scripts are getting imported onto the automation platform and how seamless the execution is. And what you're seeing now is the Talos screen, which is our Hexaware's automation platform across all the multiple channels. Now, it's as simple as connecting to a given project, wherein one has to look at the which is a channel against which I have to do, and import the automation scripts, which has been exported by the automation model-based testing tool. And you will be able to see the screen where the impact analysis, what you saw, saying that, okay, these are the new test cases which got created for the first time. That impact analysis is passed or inherited even onto the Talos platform. Now, the activity that will be done for execution is as simple as going to a given test case, and in this case, I need to now execute it on the device. So that's where we actually have built in this integration with our partners platform, pCloudy, wherein I will be able to seamlessly go connect to the platform. I would have the login wherein I will be able to choose the kind of devices I have and then start the execution. So what you're seeing is a seamless execution of the functionality, wherein there is no effort that has gone in building the automation script manually. The automation scripts are getting generated directly from the model through the connector. Now, this is what you saw for one channel, and it also has the automation reporting functionality, which enables you to actually go and look into further details about the failure or any of the screenshots. Again, the process is very simple. You import the scripts for the different channels. In this case, we're importing for a mobile web where you want to execute it on a iOS device, right? I choose a platform and then I go ahead and trigger the execution. And this goes on even for any of the cross-browser testing. And for cross-browser testing, again, we will be able to trigger the concurrent execution, wherein I will be able to choose different versions of the browsers, different types of browsers, and trigger it on multiple virtual machines on the cloud, right? So this way, I will be able to achieve a seamless automation between test case design, execution, and reporting, right? So that's pretty much, I had probably a minute or so, which will explain you in terms of the process even for the browser-based devices, wherein you will be able to see in terms of how we connect even for the desktop-based browsers. And this is again a platform by our partner called pCloud, wherein I will be able to configure the connectivity between my automation platform and then run it on the cloud. And this is something which we can do it for any of the customer platform. And what we have done is there are cases where we have built the similar kind of connectors for our customer automation frameworks. Invariably, either customers would have their own automation framework or they would expect us to bring in our framework. Wherever we have an option to bring in our framework, we leverage our Talos. Wherever customer has already invested in having their own automation framework, we build the connector which enables this seamless automation from design, execution, and to the reporting. Right. So this pretty much we talked about in terms of what the solution is, wherein how we are able to achieve multi-channel automation for model using multi-channel automation using a model-based testing approach and the integration of the model-based testing tool with a multi-channel automation framework, right? So with this, I'm done. I would now hand it over to my friend Nilesh, who will talk you through the platform, pCloudy platform in little more detail. Over to you, Nilesh.
Thanks, Nagendra, for such a wonderful demonstration. I'm pretty sure the attendees will get benefited out of this. I welcome all again, once again, and we'll move on to the corporate overview of pCloudy. Right, so we'll quickly see what exactly we do at pCloudy, who we are. So we are actually commonly known as Smart Software Testing Solutions, basically known as SSTS as a short form. We are a complete product-based company and focusing our products on creating the testing platforms. So as Nagendra was mentioned, we have two products in our portfolio, pCloudy and OpKey. He has demonstrated both the things in the presentation there. We have 50,000 plus registered users registered on this platform recently. We have 500 plus customers across the globe. And when I say 500 plus customers, these are the customers who are renewing their subscription on month basis. We have 80 plus employee strength, and which is growing day by day. And we have 3 locations across the globe where our data centers are located. So India, US, and Australia. Couple of quick recognitions and credentials at pCloudy. So I'm proud to say that pCloudy is covered by Gartner in one of their report in 2016-17 on Market Guide for Mobile Test Automation and Tools. We have 3 provisional patents with us right now. We are also covered in G2 Crowd platform. We have customers from 84 different countries, so it's a global platform as such, and 200,000 plus hours of device testing is done on this particular platform to make it pretty rigid and tested by the customers. So quickly we will see what are the pain points we are actually trying to address using pCloudy. There are so many pain points, but the key pain points which we have mentioned it here, first and the foremost is the device infrastructure. So we know that in today's mobility testing, devices plays a big role, right? And when we have the biggest landscape of Android and the iOS device landscape is also growing day by day. So we have to have a real physical devices spread across different geographies, maybe different OS and hardware software configurations, right? So we provide that using pCloudy. We will provide you both Android iOS devices, different OS versions, different hardware configurations at a single cloud. The second point which we have often seen is the distributed teams. With the current situation, we have distributed teams, testing teams sitting maybe from different geographies. So if you want to give them the devices, the physical real devices to test their mobile applications, either we will have to have redundant devices, or you will have to have certain devices with one team and certain devices with other team. So collaboration between the teams is a biggest challenge there, because if you have redundant devices, then obviously the expense on the devices is too high. If you don't have redundant devices, then if the team finds one certain defect by team one, may not be reproduced by team two, because they don't have the right set of devices, or the same device on which the defect was found. So pCloudy provides you the access to your distributed teams by remotely connecting to the cloud and accessing the device remotely. Our emphasis is more on maximizing the automation, and that's what the entire industry is trying to achieve. The previous demonstration is also for the same thing. So we can actually use pCloudy to maximize your test automation, be it for automation test creation or even for the test execution. When we say test execution, so we typically save whole lot of test execution time, because we have a capability to execute your test automation on multiple devices parallelly, in order to save your total execution time. And we in return to that, we provide you whole lot of artifacts which will be pretty much helpful for you to analyze the reports. So we are going to see that in a while, a brief about that. The third one and the last one which we were talking about is the this particular platform fits absolutely in your existing DevOps environment, just to reduce your dev and test feedback loop. So if you are using already an environment where you are doing continuous deployment, continuous testing, you can use pCloudy to execute your test automations on nightly builds or in a continuous testing mode on the physical devices. So pCloudy will provide you the access of real physical devices remotely. So let's quickly see the introduction of pCloudy, what we are actually providing you through pCloudy. So on ground, pCloudy is basically a mobile device cloud test platform, right? You can we will provide you the physical devices remotely for both Android and iOS platform. Now what are all applications you can test on this particular platform? So you can test native applications, you can test hybrid applications, you can use mobile web applications to test, and also you can use PW applications, which is what the latest market trends are. So all these applications you can test on pCloudy devices. What are all things you get it at pCloudy when you test these applications? What are all things you can do with these applications? So first and foremost, we provide is the device analytics, right? What kind of device analytics we are providing it to you, we'll see in a subsequent slides. The second thing which we can do with this platform is of course the manual testing. Though we are moving to the test automation, but manual testing also plays a very big role. So manual testing we cannot avoid, so we provide the access to manual testing, and you can do a whole lot of manual testing, say in the same way as you can do with the phone in hand. The third thing we provide is the test automation execution. So basically we provide you both test automation creation and test automation execution, and it's all parallel execution. The last thing in this platform which we provide is the Infield Ux testing, typically the crowd testing, and this is what we recommend to most of our customers, saying this is a primary case. It's of prime importance, because you get the feedback even before you launch your application in the market from the real users in the market. So this is a one-stop solution where you can do all these things, and you can get benefited out of this. Okay, so this platform, as I said, it's a remote device cloud platform. So you can actually access the platform through the web portals. You can use any standard web browser, and you can use this platform to do the to perform all the tasks which I have explained. At the same time, you can also access this platform using certain plugins which we have for Android Studio, Xcode, and Jenkins. So basically, this platform is not restricted only for the test engineers, but it can also be used by the development teams. Right now, let's see what offerings which we have at this platform. So we have three offerings. The first and foremost is public cloud. So this is basically the cloud where we have so many devices. The devices will be shared across different users one at a time. So the capabilities for public cloud is we have 500 plus real devices, which is with the widest variety of devices available on this cloud. We do have devices with real operator SIM. So in case you want to test your application with the real network, with the real cellular networks, you can actually use these devices to test your applications with. And we have three different locations. So we have our data centers located in India, US, and Australia. So basically you can use the devices from any location to test your application. The second offering which we have is called private cloud. As the name indicates here, private cloud is absolutely private to a specific client. We have seen cases where some of the clients, they say they do not want to use the shared devices. They want a dedicated device cloud. They want the cloud access 24/7. So for such kind of cases, what we do is we create an instance of the cloud which will be maintained by us in our own state-of-the-art data centers, and we provide the list of we provide the devices which is asked by the specific user, a specific client. So that particular cloud with a separate dedicated URL will be accessed only by a specific client, and the whole user management will be done by them. So basically it's a private cloud for that particular client alone. The third offering which we have is on-premise cloud. Now this is further extension of private cloud. At times we have seen the clients from different domains like banking, insurance, or retail, or even from the healthcare. They do not want their application to go outside their premises. Neither they want their applications to go outside their premises, nor they want the devices to be available outside their premises. They want everything within their premises. They want to do the testing, entire testing within their premises. But they might be having certain vendors outside who are doing their testing, or their application, their test engineering teams are sitting outside their premises. So for such clients, we actually set up a cloud. We come up with our own infrastructure there, and we set up that device cloud within their premises behind their firewall, and to which the clients can plug in the devices which they have already invested on, and create a mobile cloud like pCloudy, which can be accessed remotely by their test engineers. So these are the three primary offerings which we have in a nutshell. This is what pCloudy does and the offerings are. Now we'll quickly see what are all the parameters, the capabilities which I was talking about one by one here. So the first and foremost one is manual testing. We'll see what about manual testing. So when I say manual testing, you can actually do the manual testing in the exact way as you can do with the phone in hand. The only difference is the device is not in your hand, it is on the pCloudy server, and you are remotely accessing the device. Apart from that, you can virtually do each and everything what you can do with the phone in hand. You can install the applications on the devices, you can get the device logs next to the device, and the one of the key value add which we are providing while you are doing normal functional testing is we provide you the application performance, in terms of CPU, memory, battery, and data consumption. So you don't have to do much more. You just need to keep concentrating on your functional testing, and we provide you the application performance, which will bring a lot of value to your normal existing functional testing. You can also simulate different geographical locations for your location aware applications. You can test with the different network simulation techniques. Nowadays most of the applications are client server applications, so it is must that you test your applications with different network conditions, by throttling different network capabilities of the existing network. So we provide that simulation here, and as Nagendra was pointing it out, pCloudy is perhaps the only company right now in the market who provides cross-browser testing for mobility, right? So you can actually test your application. We are anyways providing you a variety of devices with different hardware and software configurations, but with the cross-browser testing, we are providing you different browsers like Opera, Firefox, um, Mozilla, then UC browser, right? Like this, we can provide you a whole lot of different browsers with different versions. So you can test your application on different browsers and different versions. We can capture the screenshots, you can edit those screenshots, you can collaborate using Jira and Jenkins. In case you are using Jira and Jenkins, you can straight away raise the defects in Jira or share the information using Slack. And the last but not the least is the follow me. Now this is, again, we have a very unique offering. We have something called follow me, which is typically says you test your application manually on one device and it gets tested automatically on another two devices in order to save your testing efforts and expedite your testing needs. Moving on to the test automation. So as we have seen in the previous part, pCloudy is a multi-channel test automation platform. You can test your application on different channels here. And when I say test automation, basically we are helping you to execute your test automation on multiple devices simultaneously, right? You can use your existing test cases, test suites to execute it on multiple devices parallelly and get whole lot of value added services. Like here in this case we have mentioned session video. So if you are executing some test cases on some of the devices parallelly, we generate the session video. So once you realize that your test suite is failing on any of the device, you can download the session video for that particular device and see what went wrong, right? So you're not going to miss anything apart from the reports and the logs. You're also getting the session video. So in terms of logs, we provide you all the different logs, the device logs, the framework generated logs, and the error logs. All those logs will be available. There are a couple of platforms which we have closely integrated here, which are open source frameworks like APM, Calabash, Espresso, and Monkey Test. Apart from that, we have our internal automation studio, which Nagendra was mentioning as an OpKey, which basically helps you to generate or create the test automation cases without writing a single line of code. Okay, and on top of that, we are API based system, so you can actually integrate it with any of the test frameworks which we have. Moving on to the device analytics part. Now what device analytics does here is, if you want to test your application for a specific region, let's say I have an application for a UK region where I have to launch that particular application. So it makes more sense for me to test my application on the devices which are available in the UK market or UK region, right? So device analytics will give you the finite set of devices which is covering 100% of the market for that specific region. So now you can prioritize your device testing on a right set of devices, and by doing so you are actually targeting the right market with the right testing efforts. So your testing efforts are absolutely channelized and you're not doing any ad hoc testing on the ad hoc devices. So device analytics is a very helpful feature here, which will give you the finite set of devices on which you should be testing your application. So this will give you the OS version, what is the OS version used in a specific market, what are the devices, which is the OEM, and what kind of penetration in the market does specific device is having. So all that information will be pretty much useful for you when you are using device analytics feature. The next one is Infield and UX testing. So as name suggests, this is basically a crowd testing in a real world by the real users. So we recommend that before you release your application in the market or before you upload it to Play Store or App Store, it should be tested by the real users in the real field. It will help you to get the real feedback from the users before you upload it to the market. So you can use pCloudy to test your application between different geographies and demographies. You can have a specific set of engineers from different geographies or spread across different geographies and test your application in the real market. The last point which we have is Certifier. Now we are calling it Certifier. Basically it's a AI based bots which we have at pCloudy, which will help you to give you a quick health check of your application without your manual intervention. As a user, you have to just submit your application and these bots will do the testing automatically on your application to give you a quick health check in terms of if there are any obvious crashes. There will be some functional testing done and it will give you a lot of screenshots to make out whether there is some issue with the screen or any functionality. At the same time, we are also providing you the CPU, memory, battery, and data consumption data analytics, and we will also give you a rating on a scale of 1 to 10 to tell you where exactly you stand as compared to the competitors in your domain, right? So we do the benchmarking there and then test and give you those numbers. So these are all the capabilities we have at pCloudy. Now we are on the last slide, just to summarize that this can be used. pCloudy can be absolutely used in the DevOps and CI integrations. We do have close integration with Jenkins. We do have a plugin with that, so you can use it in your CI setup. This can also be used by the developers. We do have developer support, so developers can debug their applications directly on the Xcode or Android Studio for Android and iOS devices. And in a true sense, it's a collaborated platform. You can use Jira and Slack to collaborate and share your information and raise the defects straight in your Jira. So in a true sense, this is the unified test platform which can be used for your mobile application testing for both manual and automation. So with this, I would like to conclude today's webinar, and I think we can move on to the question and answer session to take any questions we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagendra and Nilesh, for the presentation. That was great. We will open the forum for Q&A now. So please type in your questions in the chat, in the questions window, so that they can come through the platform. All right, so we have a question for, I think this, I believe, is for you, Nagendra.
Sure.
So the question is, how do you take care of maintenance of manual test cases and automation scripts generated by your platform?
Thank you, Giri. I think it's a wonderful question. And in fact, if you look at if there is X as an effort that goes in creating something, invariably over a period of time, you end up spending more than what you have spent on the maintenance, and that's a very critical component of anything that we build, right? It could be anything that we consume as a customers, or it could be anything that we build as a solution as part of the automation. Now, what we have done is, from the maintenance point of view, if you have seen that impact analysis file that was generated by the connector, that's for the automation. Now, what the model-based testing tool does is, it actually identifies the impact automatically based on the changes to the model, and that impact analysis is something which it uses to categorize the test cases, manual test cases, into different buckets. And it's based on color coding, where it will give you 4 different color codes, one for identifying test cases which has got added newly compared to the previous version of the model, one for test cases which have got modified, which has got probably obsolete because of the new test cases that has got added or modified, and the last one is the test cases which has not gone through any change. Now, what we have done is, as part of our effort in building this connector for our automation framework, we have built the technology that would inherit this impact analysis from the model-based testing tool onto our automation framework, right? You would have seen in Talos, when I showed the video, when we imported the test cases, you would have seen the one column which said the status as new. That is where we will be able to identify what is the impact on the scripts as well, and only take up those automation scripts for changes based on the impact analysis. Thank you, Giri.
Thanks, Nagendra. We have another question. This one is for I would think Nilesh. So the question is pCloudy having record playback type automation built in?
Yeah, Giri, thanks. Yeah, so we do have a record and playback feature in through Automation Studio. So I was talking about the Automation Studio. So we have a feature in which you can actually record your specific workflow for your application, and that gets recorded and convert that recording as a part of test case. And you can execute that test case using Automation Studio on pCloudy devices or on your local devices if you have any. We also have a facility to export that recording as a part of Java code and integrate it with your local APM setup. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, thanks, Nilesh. The next question is, it might be for both Nagendra and Nilesh, but I'll pose it anyway. The question is, please elaborate potential connection points to and from HP, ALM, UFT. So maybe it might pertain to both the framework and pCloudy.
Nilesh,
Nagendra, you
I
want
will
to take
take
it?
part
Yeah.
on the automation, and you can take the second part of the platform. So when it comes to integration with the test management tools and UFT, there are multiple levels at which the integration happens between the tools, right? One is at the upstream, wherein requirement management tools are being integrated with the model-based testing tool. And the second is where the output of the model-based testing tool or even our automation script that we generate is integrated with the test management tools. And in this case, the question was around HPALM. So we have built in the utility which exports the test results from the Talos onto the HPALM. And similarly, the model-based testing tool also has the out-of-the-box plugin that actually enables us to export the manual test cases it has generated onto the HPALM. Right, that's on the test management side. Second part is on the UFT. Now, what you have seen is the Talos, which is built on the open source tool, underlying engine on which this automation platform runs is Selenium and Appium. And similarly, we have the automation accelerator for UFT. We call it as UFT accelerator. And we also have the corresponding connector for the UFT accelerator from the model-based testing tool. So that way, this concept of the connector is something which can be extended to different automation tools, primarily on the automation framework or the accelerator that would invariably be built on top of the given automation tool, right? It could be for HPUFT or it could be for test complete or any other tool for that matter, right? That's a concept that we are extending to different tools. And today we have customers who use even the connectors for UFT as well as for test complete. Go ahead, Nilesh.
Nagendra. Yeah, so coming to the pCloudy part, we do not have the out of the box integration with any of the ALM tool as such, but the beauty with this platform is we do have APIs. So in case somebody wants to integrate it with any specific ALM tool, we can do that easily, though we are thinking of having one or two pre-integrated things here right now. And coming to the different tools like UFT or other tools, so those tools you can use to execute your test cases on pCloudy devices. We have a feature called device tunnel, with which you can connect the device virtually to your local system through a virtual USB, and then the way you are using that particular tool to execute your testing on a device connected to your local system can be executed in the same fashion. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Nilesh and Nagendra. There's a question, I believe, for Nagendra. This is, do you need Mac OS for automating iOS device related test cases?
Sure. So there are two parts to this. One is in terms of creating the automation script. The second one is in terms of the execution of the automation script. Now, for the creation of automation script, per se, there is no dependency on Mac OS. Even for execution, right? Until and unless we will have to execute the test case or an automation script physically on the device connected to the machine instead of doing it remotely on a platform like pCloudy. Only in those instances one will have to actually use a Mac, because Apple doesn't allow to connect to any other OS other than Mac. If you are using any platform like pCloudy or any other cloud-based mobile device platform, there is no necessity of having the Mac as a prerequisite.
All right. Thanks, Nagendra. There's another question. This one might be for Nilesh. So the question is, can pCloudy be integrated with similar such frameworks?
Similar such frameworks means the one which Nagendra has presented. If that's the
I believe
question,
so.
yes. Yeah. So as I was pointing it out even earlier, like pCloudy is absolutely API based platform, so we can integrate it with many such frameworks. Yeah, I mean, a lot of clients are using their own custom frameworks also, and we have done the integration with those frameworks also. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Nilesh. Another question for Nagendra. Which tool have you used to develop the Talos script?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the underlying tools are Selenium and Appium, but on top of that, we have built more of an accelerator. And today, we are also supporting the chatbot. And for that, there are different open source chatbot or bot specific platforms, including from Google, that we use. So for multi-channel testing, primarily between mobile and web-based, this one, we use Selenium and Appium.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Nagendra. We'll probably take a couple more questions. So let's see. There's one more question. I believe it says, are you leveraging AI on the pCloudy platform?
Yeah,
Nilesh,
I
this
believe
might be for you.
this. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, so we do leverage the AI bot testing on the pCloudy platform. As I was mentioning, we have our software bots backed with the artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. So these bots are evolving day by day, and you have to just upload your application to these bots. And because we are using AI based bots and which has machine learning capabilities, so it will learn for every different applications, different domains, different verticals, and then it will try to figure it out how many screens your application has, what are the typical workflows your application has, and do the testing on those applications and give you the quick results. So yeah, in short, we are leveraging the AI for our bots.
All right. Thanks, Nilesh. I believe this might be our last question for the day. I guess the question is, yeah, for the multi-channel testing, what are the tools do I need? I mean, do I need to have additional tools? I guess that's the question.
Sure. So when you say multi-channel, primarily, if you look at the ones that are predominant today, against which 80% of the work goes, is around either a web-based application, desktop web-based, or a mobile or a tablet, these kind of channels. So for that, there are two parts. First part is, one is uh, as part of the testing, you need the physical devices, right, against which you do the testing. That's where we encourage our customers to leverage a cloud-based platform like pCloudy, primarily because the headache of maintenance as well as procuring the devices would be actually passed on to a partner who is expert in those things. Second is in terms of when we look at from a automation point of view, again, it all depends on in terms of whether we are looking at automation for regression testing or whether automation for progression testing. If it is for regression, primarily the tools would be the ones which are in the market, like Selenium, or if it is open source, like Appium, or commercial tools like UFT or Test Complete or Tosca from Tricentis, right? So these are tools primarily you would use for execution automation. For if you want to also bring in a test design automation for multi-channel testing, and also extend that test design automation even for generating the automation scripts, that's when we actually bring in model-based testing tools, which has the capability of not just actually generating the manual test cases, but also has that inherent capability to also extend it even for automation in the form of connectors.
All right. Thanks, Nagendra. I think that's all we have time for today. There are quite a few more questions which we will respond to individually through email. Thank you, Nagendra and Nilesh, for the webinar. Thank you, audience. You've been great with some interesting questions, and hope to see you soon for our next webinar series. Thank you, and have a good day. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.